Annette, mum and daughter here from Minerva, and we're back again this month to do another Q&A video. So in these Q&A sewing videos, we ask for your questions so that we might be able to help answer them and hopefully help you in your sewing journey. So this month we've got another 5 questions to answer for you. So you guys have been sending in loads of questions, which is brilliant for us, and we've chose ones where there's maybe been a few questions that are very similar, so hopefully they can help lots of people. So let's get stuck into the questions. So the first one is from Pauline Smith, and she says, "Hi, I bought a very slippery crepe de chine fabric. Which needle and stitch should I use? Also, the skirt is cut on the bias, and previously having done a skirt that kind of bubbled or puckered so that when it hangs it doesn't lie flat. What can I do about that? Many thanks." So you've got a few ideas for this, haven't you?
Such a problem, I always think. Cutting and sewing something on the bias.
Yeah, it's never easy, is it?
All that I can say is handle it as little as possible. That means when you're stitching it as well, don't let it hang down the front.
Yeah.
Keep it up, you know, even if you have to push your sewing machine back a bit, keep it up.
Yeah.
So that it's not stretching in any way.
Yeah. And I guess when you're cutting it out as well, it's just trying to handle the fabric as little as possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
To stop it sort of stretching out of shape.
Yeah. Something about that actually with the grain lines, it's obviously if you have, say, a skirt and your grain line will go diagonally, on that's say maybe on the front, and then on the back piece it might go that way. So when you're doing your pattern, a lot of people, when you're placing it, on the fabric, a lot of people think, well, that piece fits great there and my grain line is coming across the width of the fabric. And then the next piece they might think, oh, that goes perfect there in that little bit of fabric there. So my grain line, oh, that's going down the straight of the fabric, so they'll be okay. It's not. You need to put that grain line down the length of your fabric. I suppose if they fit perfect across the width of the fabric, you could do that, but they mustn't be separate because the fabric handles different that way and that way. Yeah. So
in terms of needle, I'll jump in with this. I mean, really, just a new good quality universal machine needle, so long as it's a nice fine needle, should be absolutely fine.
It should be.
You know, I think making sure you've got a new needle is important because, you know, I mean, I think many of us are guilty, aren't we, of having the same needle. I mean, you're really bad for this, aren't you? Having the same needle in a machine for so long, and then you think, you know, I mean, the rule is to replace it every 8 hours of sewing, isn't it? Which, I mean, I don't
changed mine this week.
Oh,
actually.
wow. Love my neck. But yeah, so make sure it's a new needle and a very fine one. If you're still struggling with that though, try either a Sharps, sometimes called Microtex, so a Sharps or a Microtex needle, because they have a longer point and they just they can make it easier for sewing like fine, delicate fabrics. Yeah. So that could help.
Talking about what to sew the seams with.
Yeah, what stitch?
My thoughts on it are, if you use a stretch stitch, that could make the whole seam stretch
it's
out
almost
more.
Encouraging it to stretch then,
yeah,
isn't it?
encouraging it.
But
really it should be just a normal stitch.
Yeah.
But then that could be prone to breaking.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure though what to use. I mean, maybe a fine zigzag would do it.
Yeah, just a very fine
zigzag. It is a long while since I've sewn anything on the bias. But another must do is to let it hang, when you've sewn your dress up, before you do the hem, is let it hang on a coat hanger for 24 hours.
Even I've seen some people on the Minerva community saying even to let it hang longer than that in some cases.
Yeah, and I'm actually telling a lie there. Not when you've made it up but not done the hem. Do it before you sew your side seams. You could probably get away with sewing from armhole to waist, but from there down, let it hang.
Right, okay.
And like you said, for longer if you can.
Yeah, so hopefully, Pauline, those tips there will help. So the next question we've got is from Vicki Ginn, and Vicki asks, with some plain coloured fabrics, you cannot tell the right side from the reverse side. How do you identify the correct sides? So the first thing to say really is there is no one set rule with fabric as to be able to determine the right and the wrong side. Obviously, if it's a printed fabric, very often than not, you'll have, the colour will tell you the difference. So it'll be more vibrant and richer on one side than the other. So you'll know what the correct side is. Also, if your fabric's got a printed selvage, generally that will have some sort of writing on it, so you'll know from that which is the right and wrong side. When it comes to plain fabrics, it is where it gets more tricky. Generally, you haven't got a printed selvage, and sometimes you can get differences in colour, but it's unlikely. Generally on a plain fabric, they're going to be the same either side. Now, my opinion on this anyway is that I do feel people get a little bit too hung up on it sometimes and worry about it too much. Yeah. Now, there are some plain fabrics where there is a difference between the front and the back, and there will be a right and a wrong, which I'll come on to in a sec as to how you can distinguish between the two. But there isn't a right and a wrong. It's what you prefer, the only thing that's important is that whichever side you pick, make sure you're consistent throughout. And I would say that absolutely is the case. Even if you can't really tell the right and wrong sides, once you've chose one, keep to it. It's a little bit like knitting, isn't it? If you knit two different panels in a different batch lot, even though you can't see a difference on the ball, you can often see a difference once it's knit up, can't you? I think it's similar. After I've cut something out with that, I will get my chalk pencil and just put an I for right side. And obviously do it on both pieces. Get like a safety pin and pin it from the right side. I love safety pins. That's a good one. I think before we get into the details, I think it is important to say that our absolute firm belief is that 99 times out of 100 it really doesn't matter so long as you pick the side that you like best and stay consistent with it. However, there are some things you can look for. So you'll notice generally on a selvage there will be little pinholes, and this is where the fabric is held on a machine. Now I've got to check my notes with this because I always forget which is the right the right bit with it. So some sort of and the pinholes are like the hooks that go into the fabric, so they're inserted from the wrong side. So it means that if you run your finger gently over those holes, if you feel raised dots, so the side where the dots are raised, that will probably be the right side. So in most cases that is correct. However, there are fabrics absolutely that we've sold here at Minerva over the years, and it absolutely goes against that rule. So I think sometimes it just depends how the fabric's manufactured. Certain machines will go against that rule. So in general terms that helps you, but you can't really rely on it. On the other thing with knits, the other thing I wanted to mention with wovens is, so it's not just the colour you can look for, but if you look at the texture of a fabric, if it's got some sort of weave or texture, I often think that the right side can just feel more pronounced, if that makes sense. Yeah. So like say a herringbone weave, the right side just feels more finished, and the back side you can often just see that it's but not as pronounced. It's the best way I can think to describe it, really. Yeah. So the texture is important. And then when we go to knit fabrics, so knit fabrics can be a whole different ball game again. But with some exceptions, like Ponte-Roma will be an exception because that is knitted in such a way where both right and front are designed to look the same. But with most knit fabrics, they have a different sort of knit finish or texture, however you want to call it, sort of front and back. So the front, if you look really closely at the structure, you'll see little vertical ribs or little V's, and from the back you'll see little loops that run in the opposite direction. Which if you hand knit. Yeah, if you hand knit, and if you do a stocking stitch, so knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row, you'll know obviously on an exaggerated scale what these V's and loops on the back look like.
Yeah.
So it's just the same as that, but on a much, much smaller scale, and it can be quite difficult to see because
it can, yeah.
if they're very fine, but that is, you know, a way to check. The other as well is if you cut a knit fabric on the crosswise grain at a right angle to the selvage, when you then stretch that fabric, generally the fabric will tend to roll to the right side of the fabric. Yeah. Generally, doesn't always. It doesn't always. Isn't always the case. But yeah, and I just want to say it again. You know, there's so many fabrics that just don't have a right and a wrong side. Or there's some fabrics, let's say a jacquard or a brocade, that are so different on, you know, either side that yes, there is technically a right side. But who is to say what that right side is? It's really just pick your favourite and run with that. And if you really can't tell the difference between the two, how much difference does it actually make?
Nobody else is going to see
Nobody else is going to see it. So long as you keep consistent, that's the main thing, yeah. So hopefully that helps. So the next question we've got is from the account called Is It Lined Dear, which I love the name of that account, fabulous. Yeah, so good. So they ask, I've got a few dress patterns where the fabric suggestions are mostly woven types, but jersey is also listed. If I used jersey, could I omit the back zip, and what would I do about the facings, particularly the neck facing?
Yeah, so when I first looked at this, I hadn't seen the bit that jersey is also listed.
Yeah, so you thought it was just woven patterns you were looking at? Yeah.
So I was going to answer it one way. When I reread it, there must be a reason. It must be quite a fitted dress, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have a dress pattern at home, I know, because I've made it twice, and I can't remember the pattern number now, but it's a very fit and flare style. It has godets in the skirt, and it is a pattern that's for wovens or knits, but it suggests a zip. Now I've made that twice in a knit and I've taken the zip out, but I think what's key to it is that the knit fabric that you use has to have enough stretch.
Yes.
Because, like, you know, if you were using a pontaroma, you were saying, well, you know, pontaromas don't often have as much stretch as maybe some other knits, like a cotton jersey, for example. So if you know, if there's not enough stretch to get it on over your head, with it being a very fitted style, then, you know, just having that zipping might make it easier to get on and off, mightn't it? Having said all that, if I'm going to sew a woven dress pattern in a knit, 99 times out of 100 I'd just do it without the zip.
You would?
I would, yeah.
You would, yeah.
Yeah.
You're also asking, so if you do omit the back zip, what would you do about the facings, particularly the neck facings? I would leave them, because if you're sewing a knit dress, they usually just have a band. Yeah. So maybe you could take a little bit off that neckline and then do a band maybe about 2 centimetres.
Or you could just do a little narrow one if you wanted, couldn't
you? Yeah, you could. Just stretch it, make sure you stretch it a little bit as it goes along. Yeah. But going back to the other, if your pattern was more of a shift dress, then you could definitely leave the zip out.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the extreme case of if something's really fitted, aren't we?
That, as I said with that, it just makes me think it is a fitted pattern.
But it's still saying the zip is needed. I think sometimes though, what it is, I think, with patterns where they're suggesting both a woven and a knit, I think sometimes it's where the pattern's been designed as a woven, but when they come to fabric suggestions, they're kind of saying, well, there's nothing to stop you sewing it in a knit, but it's been designed for a woven, so the whole pattern is designed with a zip.
That's right.
Rather than then sort of do the instructions for 2 sets of fabric, they kind of skip that. Yeah. And maybe just leave it to you to think, oh, I could leave the zip out.
And just a note, if it works the other way, if it's a pattern for a jersey dress, then you can't really sew it in a woven fabric, even if you put a zip in.
No, because well, again, we're talking fitted styles here, I suppose, aren't we?
Yeah.
But a fitted garment in a knit fabric is designed with negative ease, and you can't, you know, if the fabric doesn't stretch, it can't possibly have negative ease because it just simply wouldn't fit, would it? I mean, in theory, you could size up, put a fastening in, but my opinion in that case is just go with a woven pattern, find another pattern.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It would be too much of a headache for me personally, but
I always think that somebody spent hours and hours getting that pattern just right.
Yeah.
And if you feel like altering it to that extent, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, some people love the challenge of things like that, don't they? For me, I'd
prefer another pattern.
Yeah, and save that for when I want to sew
and get on with my sewing.
Yeah. So, next question is from Jeanette Sutton. And Jeanette asks, a few months ago I bought 2 metres of pretty pink lace effect scuba fabric and some creamy skin coloured lining to go under it. The idea was to make a skirt, but I can't find a suitable pattern. Any suggestions? Both fabrics from Minerva, of course, which thank you very much, Jeanette. We really appreciate your order. Thank you. So, we think we've come up with a good option, don't we?
We do, and that is assuming that the lining is stretched.
Yeah, we have assumed that, haven't we? And the other thing as well, like, do you definitely need the lining? I mean, on a scuba fabric...
Yeah, a lace effect, to me, on a scuba fabric, wouldn't mean there's any holes in it like you would get with lace. It would be a lace or... Do you know what I mean? Like
I'm just thinking of the scuba fabrics that we've had in the past. I mean, obviously we've had a lot, so I might not be able to remember the exact ones. But I know we've had some like lace, kind of like embossed textured scuba.
That's the word.
But we have had some like cut out scuba as well that physically has holes in it, which I guess you could kind of describe as a lace effect.
Yes.
So that might be why Jeanette's chose a lining.
Yeah, and the fact that she has put a creamy skin coloured lining to go under it.
Yeah.
So we are wondering if it was one of the cutouts, which I agree.
If it was a cutout one, you definitely need a lining. We would just definitely recommend in that case to go for a stretch, not a stretch woven, a stretch knit lining, which we have here at Minerva. So it's just going to mean then that the two fabrics are going to have the same properties. They're going to stretch the same, rather than trying to deal with a stretch woven and a stretch knit, or a woven that doesn't stretch and a stretch knit.
Exactly.
It's going to make your life a lot easier. But yeah, this is, I think, a really good pattern.
Also, we didn't know from your question whether you wanted or you intended making a pencil skirt or maybe a flared one. This pattern does cover both. It's McCall's 8055. Now it's not lined. Possibly you were asking for a pattern that was lined. But believe me, you only need to sew the pattern up again in the lining so that you've got an identical skirt.
Yeah.
Put them wrong sides together and treat them as one fabric on your waistline. I think this one has like a little band round the top, although there is elastic. But you could sew them both onto the elastic, or you could sew them both onto a waistband that then has elastic.
Yeah. This is a very simple pattern, isn't it?
It is.
So, it's got that pencil-shaped skirt on one of them. One of them's more flared. Like you said, they both have elastic at the waist.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple pattern, designed for knits. I think, hopefully that'll be just what you're looking for.
Yeah. And just a last thought on that. When you get your two hemlines, try the skirt on and just double check that the lining isn't showing below the skirt. It shouldn't do if you've cut it off the same pattern. Cut, say, 1/2 inch to 1 inch off that lining. Then work both your hems. You want your lining to be probably 1/2 inch to 1 inch shorter than the skirt. And then where the side seams are, you can actually sew like a little hand bar tack.
Yeah.
Just to hold them two seams together, and it would, just in case the lining isn't anti-static, it would stop it riding up.
Yeah, it just keeps it in place as well, doesn't it?
Keeps it in place, yeah.
Yep. So hopefully that helped. So on to the last question for today. So this is from Kate Cowsill, and she asks, which dressmaking fabric types can be home dyed? I often want to put my own spin on a fabric, particularly black prints on a white background, where I'd love the background a different colour, but I'm scared to chance it. So I think probably one of the first things to say about dyeing, in our experience anyway, is there is always an element of chance.
Definitely.
Yeah, you've kind of got to accept that, really. But there's definitely rules to follow. So I've got we sell a large range of dyes here at Minerva, and we have two different brands. So we have Dylon, which we've stocked these for decades, haven't we? Really, really good. We've both used them loads, haven't we? And then we have Rip Dye, which we've probably stocked for like 10 years now, but we've less experience with these, haven't we, personally. But between all these dyes, you do have lots of different options. So there's different ways to actually dye the fabric itself, and there's different types of fabric that each of them will dye. So we'll focus on, this is kind of the one that's the oddball, which we'll come to in a sec, and then these four, they all dye similar types of fabrics, and by that we're meaning natural fibres, so cotton, silk, wool, those types of fibres. So my kind of experience in it is, if say this one for example, it's the Paradise Blue fabric dye from Dylon, and it gives you an idea of the colour on the front of the envelope. Now that, you know, is printed on a plastic product packaging. It's only an idea of the colour. It's shiny, the texture of it affects it. So it's only ever an idea on colour. But the Dylon themselves do say, if you're dyeing 100% cotton fabric, so it's going to be 100% cotton that is white, then that is the colour that it's going to come out. Which you still have to give or take a little bit, because obviously you're dyeing a fabric as opposed to a plastic packaging that's shiny.
And every fabric can have, or some fabrics, sorry, could have some sort of a finish on them. Yeah,
so satin as opposed to a plain cotton. It could just have any sort of texture, couldn't it? But if you're dyeing 100% cotton, that is basically the promise, I guess, that they're making. Now, if you're dyeing 100% silk or 100% viscose or 100% wool, so a natural fibre that's 100%, then you'll get a slight variation on that colour, but it's going to be pretty near to that colour. But, just kind of getting that across, because, say 100% cotton, for example, will take the dye slightly different to 100% silk. They just do. So, then we get into the realm of blends, which is where it gets fun. So, you might have a polyester and cotton blend fabric. So, say for example, it might be 80% cotton, 20% polyester. Now, in theory, what should happen in that case is that the dye will take 80% of the colour. So if you imagine that colour on the packet there is at 100%, if you imagine that lighter by 20%, in theory, that's what should happen. Likewise, if say your fabric had 80% polyester in it and 20% cotton, in theory it should dye 80% lighter and only take 20% of the colour. So it doesn't mean it'll be blotchy, it just means it'll be all over lighter. But this is where trial and error comes in, and you never 100% know quite what's going to happen.
That's right.
So that's the world of blends. Then you have, like, if you're dyeing, say, a garment that's ready made up, there's then other things to factor into it. So yes, you might know 100% that fabric is 100% cotton. It says so on the label. But then what about the thread it's made in? Now we have a story, don't we?
Yes, we do.
When I was a
That's
little girl, I was a little girl. I had, was it like a denim skirt?
It was a white denim skirt.
Yeah. Did
so
I get
100% cotton?
Did it get like stained or something? Or, for some reason I wanted it black. Didn't I? I got it in my head, wanted it black. Mum, can you dye this for me? So you did, didn't you? And it dyed black beautifully. It was perfect.
Yeah.
But the thread remained white. And with the thread, it was obviously polyester thread.
But the thing was, I think, that it was all the seams were double stitched. Round the pockets, on the waistband, and it looked amazing.
I mean, it turned out I absolutely loved that skirt, and I mean, it wasn't what I expected.
I think you were probably about 10.
Was I?
10, 11,
something
like that.
Oh, I loved that skirt. I mean, it totally wasn't as expected, but part of the joy of dyeing things, isn't it?
It is,
experimenting and
yeah.
seeing. So yeah, you've got that to take into account if you're dyeing something that's already made. And things like, say, the zip, for example, the zip fabric, like tape on the sides, might not be cotton. Very often they are polyester, aren't they? So there's that as well. And then in terms of, so like I said, these are all looking at natural dyes here, and what the differences are between them are these two dyes are both powder dyes, very similar except they're just different brands, and they have different colour options. And with these, you're basically going to be dyeing in some sort of tub or bucket. You know, like I know some people do it in like the bath and things like that, but I always think, oh, be careful with that, you don't want to stain the bath. Some sort of metal or plastic tub that you don't mind if it gets, you know, dyed, basically. You don't mind if the colour's affected. But it needs to be big enough so you can absolutely swish that fabric or garment round, because if there's not enough room for it to manoeuvre, it will then go patchy, so that's important. The other two, now this one is the Dylon machine pods. So with this, you literally put the whole thing in your machine. There's instructions to follow, but it's pretty much as simple as stick it in your machine, follow the instructions, and they're really good, and it just all washes away. Like in you know, 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. You had like all packaging and stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, with those, you emptied, they took over from the original machine dyes, didn't they? Where you had to empty the dye onto the base of the drum, and then the salt on the top of that.
Yeah, these are much easier these days.
They are much easier. I don't think you don't need salt with these, do you?
No, it's all included, I think, anyway. But
I'm pretty sure.
And then the last one, the RIT dye. So this is a liquid dye. It's like classed as an all-purpose dye. So with this one, it's similar to the others in that, like, you're going to be using it in a tub, but it's liquid.
Oh, right.
So yeah, it's just you know, just a different way to kind of use it. And it's actually mentioned in here on the RIT dye website. It's actually really good to have a look at, because they've loads of like instructions and like a library of over 500 different colour recipes.
Wow.
So you know, you could mix this apple green with, you know, whatever colour and come up with more colours. Really, really interesting.
That is, yeah. And
definitely getting more experimental there as well.
So can you use this one in the machine?
Yeah, you can do, yeah. So I'll just double check that, so dyeing in a washing machine is the most convenient method for dyeing large items. Can be used in top loader, front loader or HE machines. So yeah, I mean the difference between the two really, obviously this is a liquid dye and this is, you know, a pod that, I think if you're basically wanting to change a fabric from that colour to that colour, in the simplest, easiest way, sticking that in the machine, that would be my choice.
Yeah.
But this one, like, I use this liquid dye quite a lot when I was at uni, and I was doing like lots of experimental work, so I was like painting it onto fabric in big brush strokes and layering colours over top of each other, and you know, it just allows you to do things like that. But I think probably, you know, most people watching this video from a dressmaking point of view will probably just want to change the colour from this to this. So, you know, both options are very good ones. I'd probably say that's a little bit easier and more convenient. So yeah, in terms of these 4 products we've just been through, so these are all for natural fibres, which, you know, for years and years and years for home dyeing, that was all that was available, wasn't it? Now in recent years, this product has become available, and we just think it's amazing, don't we? So this is called RIT Dye More, and it's a synthetic fibre dye. So you can dye things like polyester, nylon, acrylic, all, you know, all those synthetic fibres. And I remember when I was at uni, and we could dye synthetic fibres in like the uni you know, section where all the dyeing happened, but we couldn't actually do it. It had to be one of the tutors, and you had to like book it in, and it was only these great big machines that got the temperature went up so high, and that's how it managed to dye synthetic, so you couldn't possibly do it at home. So when this came out a few years ago, I was thinking, like, surely not, like, you can dye synthetics at home. Yeah. But you can with it. I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah. I don't really know how. No. but yeah, you can dye synthetics with it. It does say on the back of the bottle here that if you're dyeing synthetics as opposed to natural fibres with this one, you need to use twice the amount of dye for synthetics. So there must be something in it where it soaks it in more. A lot. Yeah, it takes more to actually dye it. But I mean, that's fine, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So yeah, you can, even though this is designed for synthetics.
I suppose you've got to weigh in the cost. It's going to cost you twice as much, isn't it?
True, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you've got a natural fibre, then absolutely, you know, you go with one of these. If you've got if you've got a natural fibre with a blend of something synthetic in it, then you know you're probably still best going with these, but accepting that it's going to come out a slightly lighter shade.
A bit lighter, yeah.
If your fabric is all synthetic or predominantly synthetic, then you're going to be best with this one, because these just won't touch it at all. It's going to have to be this one, and you've got to use more dye. But the fact that you know people have got that option now, you know, it's a fantastic.
So I wondered if you only used one instead of the recommended two, is that going to come lighter?
I would assume so, yes.
I would assume
that. Yeah. So again, that's something else you could probably experiment with if you change from the directions on the packet, basically, isn't it? So in Kate's question, Kate says, so which dressmaking fabric types can be home dyed? So I think it's important to stress that it's not the type of fabric that matters, it's the fibre that it's made out of. Yeah. That's what's key. So synthetics, one of these. Natural fibres these, and synthetics this type. And then when you're looking at blended fabrics, you've kind of got to make a call between the two.
Yeah, I think what Kate's referring to is similar to some fabric that I once had. I think it was the end of a roll, and it had it was a white linen with black flowers on it, and it had got a mark on it, something which didn't wash out. So I then thought, I'll dye it. Yeah. I think I dyed it it was like a royal blue, and it came out lovely. Royal blue with black flowers. I guess so. That does answer your question. That yes, you can do that.
The fact that they've got a white background, I mean, that's the perfect sort of base to be working on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, the fact that it's got some other print on there, you know, I guess taking a chance to some extent, you know, that you're going away from 100% cotton, pure white, it'll come that exact colour. So, you know, depending on how that print's printed and things like that, there's always an element of chance. Yeah. But if it's a black print on a white background, I think you can be really pretty confident that that's going to come out well. Yeah.
Which does lead me to say, though, that you can't dye anything lighter.
Yes, yeah. I mean, over the years, if we had £1 for every time somebody had asked for a white dye, no such thing exists, because like my mum's saying, you can't dye anything lighter.
Or somebody like that, you know, they had a black and white fabric and they wanted to dye it blue. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah, the black flowers would never go blue. They're always going to be dark, aren't they? Yeah. And even I think as well, say if you dye in a patterned fabric, like for example, say this one I've got on. So this is a viscose chalet fabric, 100% viscose, so we'd dye pretty well. Yeah. If I chose, say, a dark blue colour, then you would very likely anyway still see some of the print through it.
I think you would.
Yeah, definitely. Because the dye on the very pale creamy bits would take differently to the dye that's going over, you know, say the dark red or the bits that are already navy blue. So the overall thing would look blue, but there'd be slight differences in shades. Yeah. So again, this is where we come to experimenting, isn't it? Because you're not dyeing 100% cotton that's plain and white. That's right. Something that's changing it.
I once experimented with something where, can you remember the little pots of Dylon that they used to do?
That was, it was the older packaging of that, wasn't it? Yeah.
And there was one what you boiled and one what you, and whichever one could go in a washing machine. I remember using that, and I mixed some colours together. And I came up with like a sludgy brown colour, but what I dyed was something multicoloured, and it came out amazingly well.
Yeah, but you could never 100% predict it, could you?
No, I would have had no idea, but bits were brown and bits were like this very pale, like taupey colour. And the effect was lovely. So, but I was willing there to experiment. You're not always willing to experiment.
Yeah, it depends on what you're dyeing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the other thing to mention, I think you mentioned it to me before, Mum, is about bleach.
Oh, yes.
So you can't dye. Well, you can dye over bleach, but if you dye over bleach, you know, say you dyed something navy blue, for example, the whole thing might dye navy, but where the bleach is, it will only take probably, you know, like a very small full amount of the dye, you know, maybe 10 to 20%, something like that. So the colour is going to be so different to the rest of the garment, so you've not gained anything. So, I mean, the amount of times over the years that people have come to us and said, I want to dye, you know, such and such, it's to cover bleach. And then we have to say, unfortunately, you know, it just won't cover it. But we have a customer that came up with the most fantastic idea. This was probably 2 decades ago now, wasn't it?
It is. I've never forgotten it.
No, we've never forgotten, have we? And she came to us and said, I want to dye a jumper, it turned out that it had bleach marks on it, so what she was trying to cover. So we said our usual to her, you know, unfortunately it won't cover it and you'd be wasting your money. But she bought it anyway, and she said, leave it with me, I have an idea, I'll be back in a week. And she came back to us and she showed us this jumper, and we were like, looks like a brand new jumper, what? and it was a sky blue kind of coloured jumper. And she said, this is the jumper. And we couldn't believe it at first. And we were like, you know, saying, how have you done that? What have you done? So what she'd done is she bleached the whole jumper, making sure she bleached it evenly.
Yeah, so plenty of water and bleach.
Yeah.
So she could swish it around.
And plenty of room to move it around in, yeah. So making sure you can bleach it as evenly as possible. And then what she did is she dyed the jumper, the navy blue dye, and because the whole garment was bleached, the whole garment took 10 to 20% of the dye, so it came up a beautiful sky blue colour, and it looked absolutely brand new. It was just absolutely brilliant. So yeah, if you're ever trying to cover bleach, that's definitely an option, rather than you know, having to throw the garment away, and you know, what a waste if we can save it, especially if it's a treasured, you know.
And maybe if it hadn't have come out so perfect, you know, maybe if she hadn't have swished it round enough or whatever.
Yeah, even if
I imagine it would have come out a bit not tie-dye, but a bit.
Yeah, just. Yeah, a little bit like textured looking almost.
I can't think of a better name really.
A little bit tie-dye, really.
Yeah, all over would have looked good. Wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's another thing to experiment with, but it's an option, isn't it? So that's all the questions we have for today. So I hope you found that really useful and hopefully inspiring as well. If you have any tips or you know, any suggestions to help answer some of these questions today, please do leave them in the comments below. We love reading. Yeah, absolutely. When you guys chip in and help as well, you know.
You never stop learning, do you?
No, absolutely not. No.
With anything, but sewing in particular.
Yeah, there's always something new to learn.
There's always
a new angle or a new take on something. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we love it when you chip in with your suggestions as well. And of course, if you've got any more questions to ask us, please do leave them in the comments below. We love seeing your questions come in, and yeah, it just keeps feeding the content for us to be able to keep doing these videos every month for you. So do leave your comments as well. And yeah, I think that's everything to today. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back again next time.